Hey, welcome guys, Magnus here, and today I want to talk about my cameras, the 5D Mark IV, which I've got in my hands, the Samsung NX1, which I've also got right here, and the GH5, which I'm streaming live with right now. Now, I use these cameras in multiple settings and situations, and by the end of this video, you'll see which camera I use for which setting, and why I use them, and why I think they're the best. Now let's go and continue with this quick little presentation I've got going on here. This is the first time I'm kind of doing this kind of presentation, so bear with me and follow along as you see fit. I'm going to go through the presentation. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to save it for the end, because the way I've got my screen set up, I won't be able to see the questions until the end, but feel free to comment, and then I'll get to them when it comes through. But let's get on with the presentation. So what I use these cameras for. Now first of all, I want to start off by saying it's up to you guys to decide on what's best to use for your cameras. These are going to be my opinions specifically, because I know the features of these cameras and I know what I like about these cameras, and then I'll make my own decision based off of what I feel. Whether I feel they're one camera is better than the other for photos, long format recording, short films or stories, vlogging, etc., etc. I'm going to choose the right camera for the right situation. And that does not always mean that I will only use one camera for vlogging and that's it. Depending on the situation and the day, I might switch it up. But what I'm going to give you is each camera and what I feel their strengths are when it comes to filming certain situations. Now let's jump on to the cameras. Now the first camera I'm going to talk about is the 5D Mark IV, which I've got right here. 5D Mark IV, I love this camera. This camera has, I believe it's about 30 megapixels, or a little bit over 30 megapixels, records 4K at a horrible codec MJPEG, I've got to say that, but at least the dual pixel autofocus is amazing on this camera, and I love using this for video as well as pictures. This thing is a powerhouse for pictures. So what do I use it for? Well, according to this presentation, yes, I use it for vlogging. Actually, when it comes to vlogging, I think it's a pretty good camera, and I'm pulling up some footage right now. It's a pretty good camera when it comes to just getting shots in focus, especially when you're pointing the camera at yourself. It's a good camera that, especially when combined with the Zhiyun crane, which I use, you can get great stabilization, great autofocus, great footage. You can get C-Log. You can't download it. You actually have to send it into Canon. But all this footage I'm showing you right now is based off of the 5D Mark IV, and it's just a really good camera for that all-around situation. It doesn't have impressive slow motion. You only get 60 frames per second on 1080p with this camera, which you can slow down to about half the speed. But it can still record great footage. Canon's color science is well renowned, as well as their dual pixel autofocus. So it's just a great camera. And aside from vlogging and that type of setup, which I personally use and I prefer because of that dual pixel autofocus. If I point the camera on me, I want it to be in focus. But I also record this YouTube show with the 5D Mark IV. And the reason is because it can really pick up my face without getting distracted by anything else when it comes to recording. And I prefer that because I want to be able to, I don't know, just get the shots that I need when I need them. And I'll pretty much show you right here that a couple of footage. I'm pulling all of this up. Sorry, that came out a little small there, but I mean large, but you can tell that my face in both shots is in focus, and that's what I need when it comes to filming. I want to make sure that my face is in focus, because when I talk to you guys, that's what matters to me. And I just want to set it and forget it when it comes to anything that I record. And the 5D Mark IV is the perfect camera for that. Set it, forget it, film what you need, and that's all you got to do. So for at least YouTube, it's a perfect camera. Weddings, I also use it for weddings because it's got the versatility to take great photos and actually absorb a lot of light, since it's a full frame camera, and take great video as well. And then dual pixel autofocus or manual focus, depending on the situation, is perfect. What else do I got? I got dance recitals, photo and video occasions, which includes weddings, and photo shoots. When I'm not taking any video at all, just simple photo shoots, yes. Now, I mentioned dance recitals. Dance recitals is a very general thing, but it's something that I record a lot. It's one of my customers actually has me recording several dance recitals, and it's pretty useful because the dynamic range that you get with C-Log helps me adapt to different lighting situations from different dance presentations. And that in itself can be crucial and vital when it comes to filming and making sure that everything is absolutely captured and you get all the details that you absolutely need. Because as you can see from this footage, you have bright background, but then if some of the girls are in the front, it's a little dark, and that could be a little bit difficult to work with when you got such a broad range of dynamic range. But when this footage is recorded, it's recorded in log, and then of course color corrected, and this is post color correction, and that's what works for me. And I actually think it's great to be able to use the 5D Mark IV and take full advantage of what it can do. And that's it. Sorry, I went a little bit ahead there as I'm trying to stop this video. I've got on to the side. But moving on, I've got the next camera to talk about, which is the Samsung NX1, which I've also got right here. Samsung NX1 happens to be one of my favorite cameras. It records 4K at 30 frames per second, and it does 1080p at 120 frames per second, and pretty much it's a future-proof camera. That it came out in early 2015, but the codec that it uses and the quality of footage that you get at such a great compression and a great quality, and the amazing autofocus that it has in itself, I appreciate. So this type of camera I'm going to use in a lot of situations. So long format recording. Now, long format recording, I basically am comfortable with all of my cameras. Samsung NX1 has a 30-minute record limit when it comes to long format recording, but I installed a bitrate hat, which lets me go to about an hour. If I go too much past that, then I'll get errors on my files. But I can record about an hour of non-stop footage off of the NX1 and have a great compression rate that's awesome for that type of recording. Let me see if I can grab some NX1 footage over here on the side. And for example, I've got some, I recorded a while ago a little play, and this play actually went on and on and on, as you can see right here. And I was able to record long stints without having to stop and start the footage off of the Samsung NX1, thanks to its ability to record longer than 30 minutes after installing the bitrate hack. So that's pretty useful. So dance recitals as well. So again, complementing that whole longer recording time that you have. But at the same time, between routines, you can stop and start. But I enjoy using the NX1 because it's got, it's the way it produces color and its color science. I actually really like it. Really makes the colors pop when you record in just basically its regular color profiles that you have. So I'm pulling up just a standard routine that I recorded here off of the NX1. And the NX1 just captured, again, all of the detail, all of the colors. It really makes everything pop. You can really get a good reproduction of the skin tones and of all of the backgrounds and everything that you need and all of those details. Though it doesn't have log footage, which is unfortunate, it at least captures all the detail I need in 4K, and it captures pretty much a look that works for me when it comes to recording what I need to record. So Samsung NX1 is great. Now, I also mentioned that it's good for photos and video shoots. This camera is a 28 megapixel camera, and it's got no anti-aliasing filter. Anti-aliasing filter basically smooths out jagged edges, but what it also does, is, in my opinion, is it reduces the detail of your photos or your video. And I don't particularly like that, because you don't get the full advantage of the resolution that your camera can possibly record or take pictures with. But since the NX1 doesn't have any anti-aliasing filter, you get all the detail. So I've done comparisons between the 5D Mark IV and the NX1, and the amount of detail that you get when you record 4K footage is, you can't compare. You can see specific details with the NX1, while the 5D Mark IV kind of smooths out that 4K footage because of its anti-aliasing feature. Not that that's bad, because if you've got imperfections, sometimes you don't want a camera to pick up all that detail, but you still want a higher resolution in your footage. So 5D Mark IV doesn't do that, but the NX1 will get you that extra detail at an incredible bitrate. Now, basically, when another thing I've got listed here is, let's say you're in a situation where, I'm going to pull up something right now. This is a 64 gigabyte memory card. It records at, its read speed is 95 megabits per second. Megabytes per second, excuse me. So this card probably averages around 20 megabytes per second of write speed if you're continuously working. And that type of low data transfer rate, it's not bad, but lower than normal data transfer rate probably won't work well with 4K footage. But on the NX1, I just dropped it here. On the NX1 uses an H.265 compression format. Now what that is, it's almost like a next generation compression format when compared to H.264, which is traditionally used by many cameras and many, I guess, video programs to actually output finished files. It's a good compression format, but H.265 takes it to the next level. But for that type of compression, you need a processor and a system that can actually decompress that footage more efficiently, which it requires more processing power. But what you get is that when you have a slower, less capable card or a smaller card with a lower bit rate, you can get higher amounts of detail. So if you have, say you have a 4K file that is 100 megabits per second, you can get similar quality from an H.265 file at 50 megabits per second, or megabytes per second. So at half of the compression rate, you get quality just as good. So I'm not going to explain all the science as why that works, but it does work. And the Samsung NX1 records that. Unfortunately, it was way ahead of its time, and not all video editing software can work with that type of footage. But currently, in today's game, Adobe Premiere supports it, and I'm sure, although I have not tested it, I'm sure that you can get it to work off of Final Cut Pro as well. So, moving on from there, slow motion B-roll. This thing does 120 frames per second on 1080p. Not only that, but you also get, which is different from what the GH5 can give you, or the 5D Mark IV, When you're recording 120 frames per second, this thing also continues to support autofocus and sound. So you could basically record yourself, record all the sound, it seems normal, and then slow it down because it's recording you at 120 frames per second, which not many cameras are able to do it. The GH5 does not record, not even 120 frames per second, and autofocus. And the Canon certainly does not come close to doing that. So that's what those cameras can do. Now, that's the NX1. Now, moving on, we're going to go to the GH5. Now, the GH5 is an incredible camera. It's actually one of my favorite cameras when it comes to the ability to come close to feeling like you're using a cinema camera when it's not a cinema camera. I'm not going to show it to you right now because guess what? I'm using the GH5 to live stream. I'm using manual focus so that it's not hunting or looking for me, because we all know the GH5 can be a struggle sometimes. But the GH5 in itself is an amazing camera for the quality of footage and the versatility in the settings that you can get off of it. So what do I use the camera for? I use it basically for live streaming on YouTube. That's the first item I've got listed there. And while I pull up some footage that I might have gotten with the GH5, live streaming GH5, it gives me a wider angle. And this is why I use it for live streaming. I like to set my cameras at 4K. I won't live stream with the 6D because the 6D doesn't support. This is another camera I have. I'm holding it right here. 6D doesn't support clean HDMI out. So the only cameras I have are the NX1 and the 5D Mark IV. 5D Mark IV does a 1.74 times crop on its full frame sensor. So it crops in. So that, unfortunately, would have any lens multiplied by 1.74 times, and it's annoying. So it would be a lot closer to my face. The NX1, although it does not do that, it uses the full sensor to record 4K. So it's a 6K sensor, and it downsamples it to 4K, which is pretty good as well. It's still 1.5 times crop compared to a full frame. Now the GH5 is a 2x crop. However, I've got a Metabone speed booster, 0.69 XL Metabone speed booster, and I've got a Canon lens on it. So the crop is not as severe as both of these cameras. I think it's like a 1.2 something times crop. So I could actually get a wider angle off of the GH5. And because I'm standing still in a live stream, I'm not going to move much. And that's a total advantage for using this setup for live streaming, which I enjoy. So let's see, for slow motion B-roll, I use it as well. It doesn't have the autofocus capabilities of the NX1, but it does have the ability to do 180 frames per second, which is pretty handy. And doing 180 frames per second is pretty cool. Now, none of this footage that I'm showing you right now is 180 frames per second, but it is off of the GH5, which the GH5, again, has great quality. So another thing that I listed is long format recording. The GH5, unlike the Samsung NX1, unlike the 5D Mark IV, the GH5 has the ability to record continuously, non-stop, as long as you want it. And that in itself is incredible, because you never know if you've got only one camera to use. If I had to record something and I could only use one camera and I can't stop when it comes to the footage, I'm going to use the GH5 because the GH5 has 0 recording limit. And you attach either a specialized battery that you can plug in so it doesn't stop recording, and then it has 2 memory card slots, so you could do relay recording and just switch out the cards from one to another. You could record forever if you need to. Not that I would ever need to do that. I've never been in a situation where I need to record non-stop for hours off the GH5. But it is reliable when it comes to that type of setup. And then last but not least in my settings is a short story or film. The GH5 does a good job at really capturing a wide dynamic range. I believe it's 12 stops of dynamic range and a good compression format at H.264 and the ability to record 400 megabits per second 10-bit 422 color information, which is good enough to record a show for Netflix if you're going to do that. Though it doesn't do raw recording, it does great color information. It's pretty much good enough to record a film if you need to. So if I'm going to record a movie and I don't care about autofocus, I don't care about any of that information, I just want to tell a story, I'm going to count on the GH5 to get me what I need. I'm not a fan of the color science too much, but from that point, I'm actually still a fan of just getting the type of story that I want to tell and focusing on color correction in post. I'll have the time to edit and do whatever I need to do later. So GH5 is great for that, and that's what I would use it for. Now, basically that's it. If you guys have any questions, now is the time to ask them. I mean, I'm pretty excited to use all of my cameras. It's just a great set of cameras that I have to use and very versatile. I've purchased cameras for every situation that I would need. Chell, yeah, I can agree with you on certain features saving you whenever you need it. So yeah, it's great. So if any of you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I'll hang on for a couple of minutes and talk to you a little bit more about my cameras for about 5 minutes, and if I get no additional questions, then I'll leave you with that. But I'll tell you a little story about using the 5D Mark IV in a situation not too long ago where it saved me, where the Samsung NX1 failed me. Now, I hinted on this a couple of weeks ago on a video, but now I'm going to tell you the story. So in regards to that long format recording, I was recording a play with two NX1s. I actually had two NX1s available. I'm going to see if I could pull up some footage of what I recorded at that play. But two NX1s available, and let's see. Do I have it here? No, I don't seem to have it here. But, oh yeah, right here. So, let's see. Actually, sorry, 1 second. No, I don't have the footage with me, unfortunately. But, on with the story. Enough stalling. So, I had two NX1s with the bitrate hack. Now, the bitrate hack has one specific defect. And that defect is if you record longer than about 74 minutes, your files will be corrupted and your recording could possibly stop. What happened is one of the NX1s that I had that I was not able to attend at a certain point, it completely stopped recording on me. And the card, it was a defective card. I don't believe I have it on me. But I'll just show you a sample. So, in memory cards, when you have a memory card, you have a little lock function right here. And if this lock function, if this little like slit that you can pull up and down, breaks off, you're screwed. And I was using one of those cards on the NX1, and I had tape over it so that that wouldn't happen. But unfortunately, the NX1 just stopped recording because it figured that tape was no longer there, and it just locked the card. So I'm standing there. It just happened to me. My client's like, it stopped recording because I had somebody watching it. I couldn't attend that camera because I'm only one person. But I was vlogging with the 5D Mark IV, and I had an appropriate lens, and I was in the right place at the right time. So what did I do? I turned on the 5D Mark IV, recording in 4K, which is 500 megabits per second. And I just hit record and let it run for about an hour. Now on the 5D Mark IV, because it records in 500 megabits per second, I normally have a 256 gigabyte CF card, which will record for about an hour, or a little bit over an hour. On top of that, a 512 gigabyte SD card, SanDisk Extreme Pro, that can also record 4K, which can do about 2.5 hours. Now, I had already recorded 4K footage of me vlogging that day, but with both of these cards, that's over 700 gigabytes of footage, and fast enough to record over 3 hours of 4K on the 5D Mark IV. So I didn't worry. The only thing I worried about is that I don't have a battery grip on this. So I just had one battery that was mostly fully charged, 5D Mark IV, and a ton of memory card space. And I hit the record button, and I had about another hour of recording to do while standing there. No tripod. But I had the Zhiyun crane on me. So I held this thing for an hour. Well, not this particular lens, but I held this combination for an hour, and I recorded the rest of that play. Did not miss a minute of footage. Fortunately, thanks to the 30-minute time limit, I had to stop and start again, but I recorded everything that I needed to record in 4K off of the 5D Mark IV, which to me, it still makes me nervous because with all that memory, the other two cameras would have had no issue in recording. But the 5D Mark IV, you have to be wary of the fact that it's going to eat up memory card space like crazy. However, it still did a fantastic job of capturing what I needed in 4K, and then editing and post with that footage became a breeze. So that's that. So if there are no other questions, then I'd like to say thank you guys for watching. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see either more live streams or more subjects, and you can recommend more subjects, please let me know in the comments down below after I post this video. Like, share, and as always, thank you guys for attending, and you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you guys next time. Take care. Have a good night.